The East Anglian air was thick with a damp chill that seeped into his bones. Ethan pulled his coat tighter around himself as he stepped out of his car, the silence of the village pressing in around him. A thick fog rolled in from the sea, shrouding everything in an eerie white blanket. He could barely see his hand in front of his face. This was Little Cromer, his temporary home. He'd come seeking a story, a legend whispered in hushed tones. The legend of Black Shuck, a spectral hound with eyes like burning coals, said to roam the marshes and churchyards, a harbinger of doom. Ethan, a seasoned journalist, scoffed at the folklore. He preferred logic, facts, evidence. This trip was merely an opportunity to delve into local superstition, perhaps find an interesting article. The fog seemed to amplify the silence, broken only by the occasional cry of a gull overhead. The houses were dark, many boarded up, as if even the buildings themselves were hunkering down against some unseen threat. He shook off a sense of unease, chalking it up to the cold and the isolation. He had a job to do. He had booked a room at the village inn, a rambling old building with a sagging roof and peeling paint. Ethan took a deep breath and made his way towards the dim light emanating from the window. The inn was as gloomy inside as it was outside. The air hung heavy with the smell of damp wood and stale beer. A fire crackled feebly in the hearth, doing little to dispel the chill. Ethan approached the bar, where a lone figure hunched over a tankard.
Evening, I'm Ethan Blake, here about a room.
Room, is it? And what brings you to Little Cromer, Mr. Blake?
Just passing through. Heard tell this place has some interesting history. Thought I might poke around a bit.
History? Aye, that it does. More than you'd want to know, I'd wager.
Like that Black Shuck tale, for instance. What's the truth in that, then?
Truth? It's no tale, mister, it's real. And it's best left alone. Room's at the end of the hall, and mind you keep to yourself. We don't take kindly to strangers poking their noses where they don't belong.
Ethan made his way to his room, more intrigued than ever. He could sense a wall of silence here, a shared fear that ran deeper than mere superstition. He unpacked his bag, a slow smile spreading across his face. This was turning out to be a far more interesting story than he could have imagined. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the fog from the previous day burned away by the rising sun. Ethan set out to explore the village, his notebook and pen at the ready. He wanted to get a feel for the place, talk to the locals, separate fact from fiction. But his attempts at conversation were met with the same guarded silence he had encountered at the inn. People avoided his gaze, their answers short and clipped, as if afraid to even speak the name Black Shuck. He found himself drawn to the village church, a towering structure of gray stone that loomed over the surrounding houses. It was ancient, its walls worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. The churchyard was overgrown, the headstones tilted at odd angles as if even the dead were restless here. Ethan spent hours exploring the church and its grounds, poring over old records, searching for any mention of the spectral hound. He found stories of misfortune, sudden deaths, and disappearances. Nothing concrete, nothing to link these events to the legend. Yet, he couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes following his every move. As dusk approached, casting long shadows across the churchyard, a figure emerged from the church.
You are looking for Black Shuck. I urge you, let it lie. Some things are best left undisturbed.
Ethan tried to dismiss the priest's words. He was a man of science, of reason. Ghosts and legends held no power over him. Yet that night, as he lay in his bed at the inn, the old man's words echoed in his mind. He couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that had been building since his arrival. He tossed and turned, the silence of the night punctuated by the creaking of the old building. Just as he was drifting off to sleep, he heard it, a low growl, deep and guttural, coming from just outside his window. He sat bolt upright in bed, his heart pounding in his chest. The growl came again, closer this time, followed by the distinct sound of claws scraping against the wall outside. Ethan crept towards the window, his hand trembling as he reached for the curtain. He pulled it back slowly, his breath catching in his throat. There, in the moonlight, stood a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. Its eyes burned like hot coals, its teeth bared in a menacing snarl. The next morning, Ethan tried to convince himself that what he had seen was just a nightmare, a figment of his imagination fueled by local lore and too much ale. But the memory of those eyes, burning bright in the darkness, lingered in his mind, shaking his composure.
He went back to the church, seeking out the old priest, his name, Father Hargrove, coming back to him. He found the priest in the vestry, dusting ancient tomes.
I see the Black Shuck has paid you a visit.
Look, Father, I'm not here for ghost stories. I need facts. What is this Black Shuck? Is it real or just a local legend?
Father Hargrove sighed, leading Ethan to a dusty corner of the vestry. He pulled out a massive leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age.
This is the chronicle of this parish, dating back centuries. Within these pages lies the truth of Black Shuck.
He opened the book, revealing faded ink and elaborate script. Ethan scanned the pages, his eyes widening as he read accounts of a monstrous black hound, its appearances dating back to the Middle Ages. There were tales of sudden deaths, plagues, and storms, all seemingly linked to the creature's presence. The more he read, the more disturbed he became.
Ethan spent the day in the church, poring over the ancient text, translating the faded script. The more he read, the more disturbed he became. The chronicles were filled with stories of Black Shuck, each more terrifying than the last. It was described as a harbinger of doom, a creature of pure evil, its appearance a sign of misfortune and death.
One particular account sent chills down Ethan's spine. It told the story of a man who had claimed to have killed the beast, only to be found dead the next morning, his body mangled beyond recognition. The account ended with a chilling warning. The Black Shuck cannot be killed, for it is death itself, and those who dare to cross its path are forever cursed.
As Ethan delved deeper into the legend, he began to experience strange and unsettling occurrences. He would catch glimpses of shadows moving at the edge of his vision, hear whispers carried on the wind. Was he losing his mind? Or was the curse of Black Shuck real, its influence slowly seeping into his sanity?
Sleep became a distant memory for Ethan. He was plagued by nightmares, vivid and terrifying, of the glowing eyes and the gnashing teeth of the Black Shuck. He grew gaunt and pale, his eyes haunted by a fear he couldn't explain. The villagers, initially wary, now looked at him with a mixture of pity and dread.
They knew what was happening to him. They had seen it before.
He became obsessed with the Black Shuck, spending every waking moment researching the legend, trying to understand its hold on him. He scoured the chronicles, searching for a way to break the curse, to escape the creature's grip. But the more he learned, the more hopeless his situation seemed.
Black Shuck was more than just a legend. It was an entity, ancient and powerful, and he had stumbled unwittingly into its domain.
One night, driven to the brink by fear and desperation, Ethan stumbled out of the inn and into the darkness. He didn't know where he was going, but he was drawn by an unseen force, a compulsion he couldn't resist. His feet led him to the ruins of an old abbey, on the outskirts of the village, a place the locals avoided. The abbey loomed before him, a skeletal silhouette against the moonlit sky. The wind howled through the crumbling arches, a mournful symphony that chilled him to the bone. He could feel the presence of the Black Shuck here, strong and oppressive, suffocating him like a physical weight.
He entered the ruins, his heart pounding in his chest. The air grew heavy, the silence broken only by the sound of his own ragged breathing. He stumbled over fallen masonry, his eyes darting about, searching the shadows for any sign of the creature. And then he saw it. Standing in the center of the ruined nave, bathed in moonlight, was the Black Shuck. It was even more terrifying than he remembered, its eyes burning like hot coals, its teeth bared in a silent snarl.
Ethan was paralyzed with fear, unable to move, unable to breathe. The next morning, the villagers found Ethan's notebook lying open amidst the ruins of the abbey. The pages were filled with frantic scribblings, incoherent ramblings about the Black Shuck and the curse. The last entry, scrawled in a shaky hand, simply read, "It is here. It is real. And it's coming for me." Ethan Blake was never seen again. Some say he was driven mad by the Black Shuck, his mind snapping under the weight of the legend. Others believe he was taken by the creature, his soul dragged down to the underworld as a sacrifice. Whatever his fate, Ethan Blake became another chapter in the legend of the Black Shuck, his story whispered in hushed tones around the fire on cold winter nights. The fog still rolls in from the sea in Little Cromer, shrouding the village in its damp embrace. And in the shadows, unseen eyes watch, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to cross their path. The legend of Black Shuck lives on, a chilling reminder that some things are best left undisturbed.